Come on, get your cockles. Je voudrais. Yeah, what's that? Les petits manger. Breakfast, is it? Deux billets. 2 tickets, s'il vous plaît. Yeah, any time, governor. Come again. Down and out in Paris and London. The podcast. So chapter 12, not much to say on this one really, so I'll let it play for a lot of this chapter. It's quite a short one, so it shouldn't take us too long to just rattle through this one.
By far my best time at the hotel was when I went to help the waiter on the 4th floor. We worked in a small pantry which communicated with the cafeteria by service lifts. It was delightfully cool after the cellars, and the work was chiefly polishing silver and glasses, which is a humane job. Valenti, the waiter, was a decent sort, and treated me almost as an equal when we were alone, though he had to speak roughly when there was anyone else present, for it does not do for a waiter to be friendly with plongeurs. He used sometimes to tip me 5 francs when he had had a good day. He was a comely youth, aged 24, but looking 18, and like most waiters, he carried himself well and knew how to wear his clothes. With his black tailcoat and white tie, fresh face and sleek brown hair, he looked just like an Eton boy, yet he had earned his living since he was 12, and worked his way up literally from the gutter.
That reference to Eton then, of course, is Eton School, Eton College, where George Orwell himself, or Eric Blair, as his real name is, had studied. And so, I mean, it stands out as a reference here, which arguably could be a synecdoche, because by Eton boy, what he means, of course, is a privileged public school boy. So Eton represents privilege and wealth of independent school life. So you could, forgive me. It could be that it's a synecdoche for privilege, really, and that's what he looks like. I think it's not just any Eton. It's not just an Eton boy. It's any boy from a public school or from a privileged background, sort of fresh-faced and young-looking. But it's just my thoughts on that one, really. It doesn't really change anything.
Crossing the Italian frontier without a passport, and selling chestnuts from a barrow on the northern boulevards, and being given 50 days imprisonment in London for working without a permit, and being made love to by a rich old woman in a hotel who gave him a diamond ring and afterwards accused him of stealing it, were among his experiences. I used to enjoy talking to him at slack times when we sat smoking down the lift shaft. My bad day was when I washed up for the dining room. I had not to wash the plates, which were done in the kitchen, but only the other crockery, silver, knives and glasses. Yet even so, it meant 13 hours' work, and I used between 30 and 40 dishcloths during the day. The antiquated methods used in France double the work of washing up. Plate racks are unheard of, and there are no soap flakes, only the treacly soft soap which refuses to lather in the hard Paris water. I worked in a dirty, crowded little den, a pantry and scullery combined, which gave straight on the dining room. Besides washing up, I had to fetch the waiters food and serve them at table. Most of them were intolerably insolent, and I had to use my fists more than once to get common civility. The person who normally washed up was a woman, and they made her life a misery. It was amusing to look round the filthy little scullery and think that only a double door was between us and the dining room. There sat the customers in all their splendour, spotless tablecloths, bowls of flowers, mirrors and gilt cornices and painted cherubim, and here, just a few feet away, we in our disgusting filth. For it really was disgusting filth. There was no time to sweep the floor till evening, and we slithered about in a compound of soapy water, lettuce leaves, torn paper, and trampled food. A dozen waiters with their coats off, showing their sweaty armpits, sat at the table mixing salads and sticking their thumbs into the cream pots.
Bit more
the room had
bodily
a
fluids
dirty,
there for
mixed
us.
smell of food and sweat. Everywhere in the cupboards behind the piles of crockery were squalid stores of food that the waiters had stolen. There were only 2 sinks and no washing basin, and it was nothing unusual for a waiter to wash his face in the water in which clean crockery was rinsing. But the customers saw nothing of this. There were a coconut mat and a mirror outside the dining-room door, and the waiters used to preen themselves up and go in looking the picture of cleanliness. It is an instructive sight to see a waiter going into a hotel dining-room. As he passes the door, a sudden change comes over him. The set of his shoulders alters. All the dirt and hurry and irritation have dropped off in an instant.
So as we enter this description of waiters, we've got that polysyndeton there of all the dirt and hurry and irritation have dropped off in an instant, to show the sort of the backstage life of the waiter, and then in contrast with his front of house demeanour. So it's the polysyndeton there just showing the range of things that he has to stifle when he goes front of house.
He glides over the carpet with a solemn, priest-like air. I remember our assistant maître d'hôtel, a fiery Italian, pausing at the dining-room door to address an apprentice who had broken a bottle of wine. Shaking his fist above his head, he yelled, luckily the door was more or less soundproof, "Tu me fais chier! You call yourself a waiter, you young bastard! You a waiter! You're not fit to scrub floors in the brothel your mother came from! Maquereau!" Words failing him, he turned to the door, and as he opened it, he farted loudly, a favourite Italian insult. Then he entered the dining-room and sailed across it, dish in hand, graceful as a swan. 10 seconds later he was bowing reverently to a customer, and you could not help thinking, as you saw him bow and smile with that benign smile of the trained waiter, that the customer was put to shame by having such an aristocrat to serve him.
That hendiadys there as well of the bow and smile, both linked together as a sort of similar subservient behaviour of a waiter, but that sort of faintly aristocratic behaviour that he mentions himself there, and that slightly intimidating aspect of a waiter that or a waitress that you might have had, the sort of strange juxtaposition of someone who's waiting on you and yet seems more posh than you are, sort of thing. It's that strange dichotomy of the job of a waiter, the sort of the role that a waiter plays, and that seems to capture that sense in what he's just written there.
This washing up was a thoroughly odious job, not hard, but boring and silly beyond words. It is dreadful to think that some people spend whole decades at such occupations. The woman whom I replaced was quite 60 years old, and she stood at the sink 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, the year round. She was, in addition, horribly bullied by the waiters. She gave out that she had once been an actress. Actually, I imagine a prostitute. Most prostitutes end as charwomen. It was strange to see that in spite of her age and her life, she still wore a bright blonde wig and darkened her eyes and painted her face like a girl of 20. So apparently, even a 78-hour week can leave one with some vitality.
A little bit of that humour at the end of chapters, and we've got that here. Even a 78-hour week can leave one with some vitality. Now that's euphemism for obviously hard work. It's really hard physical manual work. So the 78-hour week is not just the hours, it's also the content of those hours. So it's a euphemism for basically a horrible job. It's also a synecdoche in a sense in the what it means is the working classes. So the 78-hour week is the life of the working classes. So there's an element of synecdoche there as well. But it's also, it's not bathos as such, but it does end with humour, because it's saying that even that can leave one with some vitality. So there's sort of a strange admiration in these people who do have these jobs on a more permanent basis than he's had. So you've got that vitality, which is sort of, I mean, some vitality. Is it sarcastic? Is it litotes? Depends how you want to read it, I think, really. You imagine it's not much vitality. And the fact that this woman wore a bright blonde wig and darkened her eyes and painted her face like a girl of 20, I don't know how convinced we are by that. I mean, you could compare that to Funder's description of women and makeup. But it seems for Orwell that it does give her some vitality, but obviously it's only makeup, it's not real vitality in terms of actual life and a well-being. Okay, and that'll do for chapter 12. See you next time for chapter 13.